Hi, my name is Erin Cavanaugh, and I am the caregiver of a survivor. Um, you have these moments in life that are defining both for you as an individual and as a couple and even as a family. And an aortic dissection will do that. It is a defining moment. Each one of us, I guess, completes that moment in their own way. For me, it was a lot of learning, a huge learning curve. I had no idea it was up and coming. Tom had been told he had some high blood pressure issues, and for him, he felt it was situational and would go away, and it didn't. It resulted in him waking me up at 6:30 in the morning, 2 days before Christmas, telling me that he had to go to the hospital. I said, "Okay, let me take you." He said, "No, I've already called the ambulance because I don't think it's going to be pretty and I don't want you to see it." What he didn't tell me was in his years of volunteer paramedic and or EMT and firefighting, he had a pretty good idea what was happening. And me, of course, I did not. So he got in the ambulance and we arrived at the hospital. And lo and behold, the doctor came out to us in the waiting room and said, "If I don't operate on him within an hour, he's going to die." That was pretty shocking because I wasn't sure what was happening. And then within that same hour, the doctor came back out and said there was no way he could operate. Very confusing, right? You hear your husband's going to die and you're trying to wrap your head around that. And then you wonder if he's going to survive the surgery. And then they come out and say there's not going to be a surgery. It's daunting. And so he laid in a hospital bed thereafter, medically managed, which is probably a term anyone who's experienced a B-side dissection with their loved ones would understand. But the pain he was in was so much that it was a constant fentanyl drip, which of course gave him a lot of dreams, a lot of weird things to say. But anyway, at one point, I guess we were 17 days in, the doctor came to me. They hadn't done anything with him but medically manage him. The doctor came in and said, "There's nothing more we can do." At that point, he was going into renal failure. Unbeknownst to me, because I hadn't really done the research, didn't know what I was researching at that time. All of the blood flow that had been restricted due to the dissection was affecting his lower extremities. So I have an extensive, very large family. And so I called upon my family, who made arrangements to have Tom life flighted down to Bayshore, Long Island, to Long Island Jewish. There was a doctor there who was doing a lot of good things, experimental and otherwise, keeping dissected patients alive. So on a very cold, snowy day, I went up to the helipad with the security people as they wheeled my husband, my life, into a plane, a helicopter to take him away. And that's really hard because they were taking him 4 hours away from me. I knew my family was down there and would give me some support as far as that goes, but you just watch that helicopter take off. It's pitch black outside. The snow is swirling and it's freezing out, and it's the middle of January and he's gone. Naively, I thought that they would do the surgery down there. That's kind of what the doctor had told me. They would plan to do surgery. So this was Wednesday night. I figured, okay, they'll get him in there, get him settled. Thursday, they'll do surgery. And Friday, I'll go down and pick him up and come home. I had just started a new job. I was in training. Didn't want to lose my job. So it was a very tough spot to be in. Anyway, I went down Friday night to stand around the bed with the doctor, who informed me he was not going to do a surgery. I've never fainted in my life, but I certainly felt my knees buckle at that point. So from there, he was hooked up. He had lines running everywhere. He was so wrapped up in IV cords that um, we had this crackerjack, really great nurse. His name was Jampa. And till the day I die, I'll remember Jampa. Jampa said, my name is just like Tampa with a J. So Jampa. He took one look at Tom all tied up with all those IVs and all the papers they had left on the floor. And he said, okay, I need you to leave. I looked at him and I went out into the waiting room. And by the time I came back in, Tom had all of his IVs straightened out. He was able to be more than 3 inches away from that IV pole. He had 5 of those boxes running into him at that time. And this guy was just matter of fact, awesome, cleaned up everything, and Tom actually looked human again. So he was a gift from God. And you find, whatever your belief system is, that you meet these people that are gifts in your life at the moments when you need them most, right? I had no experience with what was going on and was kind of lost, building my way myself. And that was a tough spot to be in. So it was a long road. They finally got him medically managed. He was on 20 pills twice a day at that time. They wanted him to stay there for rehab, but he'd had enough. He wanted to come home. So he said, I'm out of here. I'm not doing rehab here. I'm 4 hours away from my family. I don't want to do this anymore. So they dragged their feet to release us, and they released us at 10 o'clock at night with a man who had maybe been halfway down the hallway a half a dozen times after being in bed since December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, when he dissected. So we got released 10 o'clock at night with a handful of paper prescriptions. They wouldn't even give me pills to get me through the next 24 hours so that I could take care of him. And here you go, sign the papers, sayonara. Get him out to the car. I have no wheelchair. I have no walker. I have no crutches. I have no way to move him around. So I've got a handful of prescriptions. I know he needs to have his pills very shortly. What do I do? So I'm thinking, what are my pharmacies back home and what are the pharmacies here? CVS. They're everywhere. So I went to CVS, and this wonderful, another gift, another angel, took a look at the papers and took a look at all these prescriptions and said to me, if I fill these the way they're written, it will kill him. Oh, that's nice. 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, trying to reach the ICU where Tom was to have somebody straighten out the prescriptions was yet another nightmare. But he did it. He was great. And he was just an intern. So I see a bright future for him. Anyway, or actually, I'm sure he probably has it because this has been since 2012 now, 2013 when we met him. So finally we get the prescription straightened around. And fortunately for me, my brother lives on Long Island. So we were able to stay with him overnight before we began the trek back to where we live in upstate New York. So we drove home, and thus began the biggest part of the journey. Learning how to live with one another, right? Learning the fragility, learning, can you touch them? Can you, what can they do? How much do you push? How much do you coddle? All those were new for me because Tom is very strong-willed, strong of physicality, and very frustrated with himself at this point. When he was struggling to go to the bathroom, just walking down the hall, I remember him being so angry at feeling defenseless. And the fine line you have to walk between a man and his masculinity and your coddling. It's tough. You don't want to take away his masculinity, but you're fearful. You're fearful for the fall. You're fearful for the bump. You're fearful for any jostling that could in your mind, jeopardize his life. So a learning curve, a really, really long learning curve. And to this day, that learning curve still goes. I know in his frustration, he gets very angry, and that life for him has changed immensely. Life for all of us has changed immensely. And sometimes we become siloed. In our silos, we kind of wrap ourselves up, and we try not to give our burdens to anyone else, how we're feeling, how scared we are, what do we know, what can we do? It's all very scary. Tom has never been someone to rely on anyone. He fancied himself the family vacuum cleaner because everyone went to him with their problems. Everyone wanted him to clean up their mess. For him to be in this situation was not necessarily a new place for him to be, but it wasn't a place he liked to be. And so, when you don't look sick, that adds an extra burden. People don't understand, and it makes it a little bit daunting. So we've gone down the road, good times, bad times, some fun times, as we get back to, or we try to establish what's a new normal, right? We have a daughter who went to school, went to college, got her nursing degree. Very proud of all that she's accomplished. We have 7 kids all together. We have a his, hers, and ours. All the rest are boys. We have 1 girl. I've got 4. He's got 2, and we've got 1. And so we also have that menagerie of personalities and people and all of that we work with, trying to maintain our new sense of normal. And I think we've got 10 or 11 grandchildren at this point, because as we have his, hers, and ours, they have his, hers, and ours. So family is family, and family is very important. And I hope that for all of you that you've had some support. I know that I tease often, I've done so much research with aortic dissections, and I received an awful lot of support from total strangers who have gone on this journey too, that I've befriended over the years. They've been a godsend in the days of darkness when I didn't have anybody else to ask, is this okay? Is this normal? But I started, neither one of us are great proponents of pills. We like not to take it. I mean, medicine has its place, don't get me wrong, it does, and it's necessary. But we prefer trying holistic ways of relieving pain and working naturally. Did a lot of research with essential oils and a lot of vitamins and herbs and supplements. So he's got a lot more of those these days than regular meds. We've gone from 44 pills a day down to about 5. We have a wonderful doctor who works with us, because certainly you never want to stop taking your meds without doctor's approval. We're not medical professionals by any stretch. We're just trying everything and seeing what works. It's like perfume, right? Perfume that smells one way on one person will smell differently on another. So what might work for us might not work for you. And we've also found that sometimes things work for a little while and then don't work after that. So the research has given us a whole plethora of things that seem to work. I mix a lot of the essential oils so that he can rub them on for pain relief. We started with using carrier oils that were liquid, and we've moved on to a carrier that's a little more solid, so it drinks into his skin. I mix several versions, 3 or 4 at a time, so that he can alternate between them, because being natural, build up a tolerance kind of quickly. So he can use it for about a week, maybe 2, before he has to move on to the next one. So we like that. It gives him some relief without chemical or having those affect his mind, as well, making you sleepy, as a lot of the pain relief will do. So we found a real balance between using the stuff when the pain is too intense and the oils won't work, and what he can manage with the oils. We do a lot with circulation. We have found that probably when you're in the hospital and you've faced a dissection, they put the compression pants on you, or the legging things that pulsate and keep the blood flowing in your lower extremities. We bought a set of that for our home use. We are now on our 3rd set after 13 years. They do wear out, but they're really good. They help him a lot, especially with the swelling of the feet and the ankles from the lack of the circulation. So it helps push the blood back up and gives him some relief. So sometimes he uses them a couple of times a day, and then sometimes there's days he doesn't use them. So it all depends. We've found a new normal, still do stuff together. We've traveled. We had the blessing of a trip to Ireland about 1.5 years ago now, and it was fabulous. We didn't take a tour because mobility is still an issue. So we rented a car and did our own thing. We had certain places that we wanted to hit and planned our itinerary, and it was fabulous. And what they say about the green grass of Ireland is surely true. The green is green like you can't imagine. I have wonderful memories and wonderful photographs. And Tom is a huge, huge John Wayne fan. So we did have to go to the John Wayne Museum, which is from The Quiet Man. And that was probably the biggest highlight of the trip for him. But it's a new normal, and we're making it work. And there is difficulty. There is anger. There is frustration. There's a whole lot of anxiety about what each day holds. And going forward, I have found power through education, through research, and through friends and family who stood by us all those long days that Tom was in Long Island and I couldn't be there. I had quite a train of my family who would troop in and make sure he was okay and didn't need anything, and would sit and visit with him for a while. I used to think when I was a kid that I was related to all of Long Island because my mother's family is so large. But it was a wonderful blessing to know that they were popping in and checking on him and sitting with him for a while when I couldn't be there. So we've continued on our journey, found a fabulous doctor in Albany who took us on and said, we made an appointment with him. He was fabulous, Dr. Maida, and he gave us Tom back. He gave us his life, and he was a fabulous, fabulous surgeon, vascular surgeon. And he sat down with his drawing pad. You know how these doctors sit there, and he's a very dapper man, and he sits there and he's got his suit on and he's got the legal pad, and he draws his aorta, and shows it to you, and it kind of looks like a kindergartner drawing. He's a wonderfully educated man, but he can't draw at all. And he said, this is what this is what we're going to do, and this I've got a plan. Not a very good plan, but I have a plan. And Tom was so desperate by that time. We were 5 years into this, and he was getting weaker and weaker, and no one wanted to touch him. We sent his scans to Florida. We had an appointment in Philadelphia, Rhode Island, and all of them looked at us and said, there's nothing more we can do for you. But this man did. I have a plan. It's not a good plan, but I have a plan. We were on board. And slowly over the next 3 years or so, maybe 4, he pieced them together with a lot of stents and a lot of grafts. And his kidneys were now getting the blood flow they needed. So that was good. He had a wonderful nephrologist here who got his kidneys back working just about to a normal level of someone his age, which was beyond what we could have hoped for. So all in all, people have been in our path at just the right time and have helped us move along. Has it been great? No. Has it been challenging? Absolutely. And are we day to day relearning, reinventing, researching? Yes. Yes. And are there days that I walk out and cry in the car? Yes. Are there days I just feel overwhelmed? Yes. I know that he has those same days. And while most people would think, well, if you're married, you should be turning towards each other, but you don't really want to add more anxiety to the person who's already feeling anxious, right? So deal with it your own way. So, so we do, and sometimes we yell. Sometimes there's a big blue cloud of smoke that is hovering over my house from all the that goes on. But for the most part, you're in a partnership. And I had seen my mother go through it. My dad actually fell off a 6-foot step ladder just before my 12th birthday and broke his neck. I found him. So I watched them stand together as a couple, and I can't imagine that I would do anything different with this. But yeah, there's days it's tough. There's a lot of days it's tough. But there's a lot of days it's good. And you have to remember the good, and you have to focus on what brought you together to begin with, and that the person that you fell in love with is still that person. Maybe a little bruised and battered and not quite in the same condition, but I told him, I just love antiques. And so I guess that's why I keep him around, because he's my personal antique. But anyway, I am certainly happy to help anyone on this journey, and certainly so appreciative of those who have gone before me and have helped me. And I look forward to the dialogue going forward, that we can share and uplift one another. What works for you might work for me, might not work for me, but at least the ideas are flowing, and the chances for healing, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, are all there when we can uplift each other going forward. And I look forward to chatting with all of you as I can, and as you ask for help, or as you throw me ideas that I can use too. Thanks for your time and listening, and I look forward to doing more with all of our aortic friends going forward. Funny, I remember so much, but I've forgotten so much too. I think the best thing that somebody could do for themselves going forward, especially a new person, is to keep a journal, a diary, so you don't forget, dates and times and people. Jampa with a J, I will always remember him. I wish I could remember the name of the young intern that was the pharmacy intern. I wish I could. I mean, if that young man hadn't picked up on it, who knows if someone else would have just filled it. And he, like I said, yeah, has the road been hard? Oh, it's been incredibly hard. Has the dream and, all the things you planned as a couple and a family gone to shit? Yeah. But there's a lot of good things. We've met a lot of good people, and we've had to reevaluate things. And maybe God puts things in your way because it's time for you to rethink. You need the knock in the head so that you stop going full steam ahead and group. So I'm not sure what the reasons are. I probably won't know as long as I'm alive, but I know that we have managed to muscle through it. And I have a child with learning disabilities. So for me, caregiving and, I don't know, helping people has always been my forte. So um, I I had started a parent support group for kids with learning disabilities. My child isn't severe as some people's are, you know, but I had started this care group, and my opening thing to all these parents was, you know what? This baby that you held in your arms and you had all these hopes and dreams for, you don't have to give up those hopes and dreams. You just have to change them a little bit, right? So when Jason, my son, was going into special ed, that was really tough for me because I had kept him in mainstream for as long as I could until he was trying to do his schoolwork, his regular day work when he was home at night because he just couldn't keep up. So I met his teacher, and I'm telling you, here you are devastated about the shortcomings of your child, and you meet this woman who says, "Are you going to give me your son? Give me your son." And I looked at her and she said, "It's enough if they know how the blood goes around the body. He doesn't have to know each vein and capillary. It's enough." And somebody, after all the fighting I had done to keep him in regular school and to keep him normal, somebody actually wanted my son, you know, momentous, momentous. So I became the parent representative on the committee for special ed for New York State as well, evaluating and whatever, other children's performance plans. So, it's not, you just have to take a beat, and I like what you said about your lanes, and that's a new term for me to use, is the lanes. I've used it quite a bit, knowing your audience, and you have to know your people, right? And you have to know how to reach them. And some things work for some things don't work for others, but it's all thrown out there, right? So you have a choice. You have a choice to see what might work for you by the others who have walked the path ahead of you, right? So, there isn't anything. I worked for medical college. I worked for Upstate Medical here, with new doctors, right? They were going to school. They were in med school. I had third and fourth year medical students that I was working with. And the dean of the college said, "We're not really teaching them medicine, we're teaching them how to make decisions." What? Doctors are gods with a little g. Are you kidding me? You're teaching how to make decisions? So I learned, and this was well after Tom's dissection, that treating these doctors like demigods and taking everything at face value isn't necessarily where you need to be. Sometimes you need to ask the questions and not just say, okay, because you said so, we're going to do this. And sometimes you have to ask why, or maybe you have to do your own research and then say, what do you think of this? Because they become entrenched in their lanes and they don't necessarily expand their horizons either. I don't know if you've ever read the Harry Chapin poem, Red Roses Are Red. Read it. It's fabulous. The child who was encouraged to draw however he wanted, his family moved and he was brought to another school where that freedom of expression was not allowed. And he became indoctrinated with the blue sky is blue, red roses are red, and you don't change that. Grass is green. So, there's been studies about children who are geniuses before they enter school. The creative thinking that we put in a box. This is the way it's always been done. This is the way you have to learn it. And this is the way, and that's why we have all these college students who can't function and who have a mountain of debt because they didn't belong in school. They belonged in a trade school. They belonged with somebody showing them. They belonged in an apprenticeship. They did not do well because they were, it's like the sled dog, right? You only see the butt in front of you going forward. So, but there's so much more to life. There's so much more to be seen, but you have to be able to step away from that. And, you know, and that's a scary place to be too, you know. But these kids that are graduating with mountains of debt because they thought they could take out enough loans to just live on, eat on, and everything else on, and now are wondering how to pay for it on a $35,000 a year job. And you've got the tradespeople who are making more than surgeons. We've shifted. There's no, I find in our lifetime, there we either are swung this way with the pendulum or swung this way. You know, everybody runs here for this latest and greatest, and then they run back here for this latest and greatest. But how about being in the middle where we can take a little of this and a little of this and make it work? You know, I remember back in the 70s, and I'm taking up too much of your time, but everybody was running to be a truck driver, right? Smokey and the Bandit and all those movies and, Burt Reynolds and the hot car and racing across and trucker, breaker, or whatever, and who was that? Greg Evigan, and he had the monkey that he traveled with on the tractor trailer. Everybody ran to be a tractor trailer driver. So the wages for that tanked. Tom was an executive chef. Everybody ran. Emeril Lagasse and all those and the shows. Everybody ran to be a chef. The wages tanked for that. So because they had such an influx and everybody running to the latest and the greatest. So I don't know. Wisdom of ages, I guess. I could fix the world.